Hey gang, welcome back to another video. Now, as someone who's looked forward to the sci-fi future they promised us in the 1950s, 60s, 70s, and 80s, I've decided that smart devices might be the closest thing I'll see in my lifetime, and even those don't really scratch the itch. So rather than wait, I'm going to convert our Smart Thermostat into a HAL 9000 from 2001: A Space Odyssey. And I'll deal with the consequences later. So let's get to it. While doing my usual project research, I stumbled across these plans for a laser-cut version of HAL 9000 courtesy of Adafruit. They look like they'd work well for my project, and I firmly believe that there's no point in reinventing the wheel when you don't have to. So I'm going to use these plans as the base for this build. But before I could cut everything out, I wanted to make some adjustments to the file that I thought would uncomplicate the assembly, starting with removing some of the elements that won't be necessary for my version. And just like that, I've got my final design that I can send to my laser cutter. After loading in the acrylic, I could adjust the position of my design and get to cutting. Once the pieces were cut and the protective paper coverings were removed, I could spray them with an aluminum spray paint to replicate the metal finish from the original prop. When all the outer facing edges were coated, I could set them aside to dry while I focused on the brushed aluminum insert. I had this black brushed aluminum vinyl that I thought I might be able to apply to the acrylic before cutting to get a finished edge on the piece. So I applied it to the surface with my burnishing tool to get out all of the air bubbles, and then sent it off to be cut in its final shape. With the inset cut, I could get to assembling the piece, although this definitely came back to haunt me since I needed to wait for the lower grille section to be finished before I could do my final assembly, or else I'd have no way to lock it into position. So in the meantime, enjoy this clip of me being impatient. And speaking of the grill piece, I wanted to 3D model and print this part since it had a wavy pattern, and this was the quickest way to achieve that look. So I imported the grill portion of the Adafruit plans into Fusion 360, selected the outer shape, and extruded it to match the thickness of my acrylic. Then I could determine the spacing and placement of the waves on the profile of my extrusion, and use the mirror on a rectangular path function to duplicate it. With my wave pattern laid out, I could select each of the triangle pieces and cut them away from my part using the Extrude Cut function. This left me with a series of triangular steps, but by selecting the peaks and valleys of each step and applying a small fillet, it would round over that edge and create the soft wave shape that I was after. The last thing I'd need to do is select all of the holes in the original design and cut them out, once again using the Extrude Cut function. Then I could export my design, send it to my 3D printer, and I would have my grill piece. But before I can install it, I'll need to prime it and then paint it with the same aluminum spray paint as the other parts. When everything had fully dried, it was time to put it all together. Thankfully, it's all slotted construction, so everything locks into place and needs very little glue to keep it all together. The only thing left to do now is add on the HAL 9000 plaque at the top. And for that, I cut out the design from vinyl and will apply it to a piece of 16th-inch aluminum skinned acrylic. It's not exactly the same as the movie prop, but it's what I had on hand. Because the acrylic is cut just slightly larger than the decal, I'm going to use a favorite trick of mine and wet down the surfaces with a bit of water. This will allow me to get the placement just right before squeezing out any remaining water to set the decal in place, which is a good thing, because it took me a few tries before I got it right. If you wanted to give yourself even more of a safety net, you could add a drop of dish soap to your water bottle, which will allow the decal to slide around on whatever surface you're applying it to. With my decal correctly positioned on the acrylic, it was time to glue it in place. So I applied a few drops of CA glue to the back and locked it in position. And at that point, I'm calling this one done. Now, while this build may not be for everyone, hopefully there were some tips or techniques that you can take away from the video that you can apply to your own projects. Well, that's going to do it for this one. Be sure to like and subscribe if you haven't already, but most importantly, go make something.